three-part question for you. What were you like as a kid at 17 the day before, the day of the assassination, and since the days after? How did it change you?
What did I know? I was 17 years old, working my ass off in school, trying to go to college. And we were all we were all shocked by it, but we didn't question it, and I didn't know anyone who did. My father was a smart man, but he disliked Kennedy. He disliked Castro, and he just loathed Roosevelt. That was his pet peeve. So I grew up in that world, and I was made to work on the East Coast. And so nothing changed for me. I mean, Vietnam is what changed me. It started to change me, and that took a long time. I mean, Vietnam was a result of, I think, partly, a large part, because of the changing policies of Kennedy's death. I didn't know that day.
Right.
I ended up there, but it took me another 10 years after the war to talking to people, evolving. It takes a long time to change. And started to commit myself to more progressive films in the 80s, 90s, but still, until I got into this Untold History in 2008, I really was not, I was a dramatist. I was interested in history, but with Peter, we really went into it, and I learned a lot more.
So Peter has a course, Oliver Stone's America, and can you briefly tell what that is?
Yeah, he teaches at American University. He has other courses. He's a nuclear professor. He's a director of Nuclear Policy Institute at American University. He's done books on scientists of the 1930s. But he does teach a course that's very popular there on the films and how they intersect with history. Now, these are dramatic films. These are not documentaries. This is a documentary. I just want to point that difference out.
So what is it like to unearth nuggets, a lot of times forgotten nuggets, of our American history? What was it like doing Untold History?
Oh, for me, it was night and day. I wanted to understand how Kennedy's murder is so crucial to me. It always was, but because of what I experienced in my lifetime, by the time 2008 rolls around and we have George Bush for 2 terms, I'm really beginning to beat my head against the wall, as any veteran might, and say, why are we going back to these wars over and over again? It seems like we don't learn anything. So I wanted to know what the pattern was, whether Bush was the aberration or whether he was just an extreme example of what our policies have been since World War II, and I find that that's the case. I find that Kennedy is the only president we've had in these last 70 years who's really tried to make a significant change. None of the others have. And you must give him credit, as I said in this little clip you saw, because, he was coming into a storm. By 1960, we built ourselves up to a huge muscular edge over the Soviet Union. We had almost a 10-to-1 parity. We had 30,000, under Eisenhower we reached, by 1962, we went from 1,000 nuclear weapons to 30,000. We were a force to be reckoned with. And the Joint Chiefs, many of them felt like LeMay did, Curtis LeMay, that we've got to go to war. Because if we don't go to war now, there'll be all these crises in Berlin, there'll be crises in Cuba, Laos, Vietnam, we'll never get out of it. We've got to deal with the Soviets now. And we can beat the hell out of them, we can take their testicles, as Curtis LeMay said, and their ability to retaliate will be minimal. We can sustain those losses, and that was the basis of Kubrick's movie. We could sustain the losses. That was always the idea. And if we don't beat them now, if we don't take them on now, they're going to come back later, and they did. They had more power, they built up. After they were so humiliated by the missile crisis that Khrushchev gets kicked out. Khrushchev wrote to Kennedy after the crisis, he said, out of evil can come good, which is a beautiful letter, you should read it. But after they got rid of Khrushchev, they started to build up until they almost reached parity. Of course, we lied about their strength, and Reagan got into office on that basis of warning us once again about the evil empire.
When I think about JFK, I believe it was a film that was made for my generation. I was born in '64, and I didn't really know anything about JFK, and that kind of catapulted him back into pop culture. So how does it feel that your film helped create the National Assassination Review Board? And
I'm very proud of that.
That's a pretty amazing feat.
The JFK Act did a lot of good. the JFK Act has kept this thing alive, because we've had the Warren Commission, and then we had the House, we had the Church Committee, then the House Select Committee did a pretty good job of deconstructing the Warren Commission. Pretty good, but not all the way at all. And then the Assassination Records Review Board did have the ability to look at some 4 million pages of documents. There's actually 6 million pages. So there's a lot there. And if you really want to know the details of this, and I'm not an expert on the details, I would advise you to read, so there's one book especially that just is terrific. There's several books, but no one in the mainstream press ever reviews these books. You never know about them, but I think he's here tonight. I want to mention Jim Eugenio, and he's written a wonderful book called, 2 wonderful books. First of all, he's updated Destiny Betrayed, which is the whole picture, wonderful analysis. But above all, I urge you to pick up this Reclaiming Parkland, which is published by Skyhorse Press, a small press. But in that book, he goes into detail, the most detail I've ever seen, on the Vincent Bugliosi book, which has got so much credit in the mainstream, that 2,000-page New Warren Commission book. And Jim does just wrecks it. He wrecks it, and he explains to you in detail that is unbelievable. So if you have any doubts at all, even if what you see with your own eyes, which has always been the most convincing to me, is what I saw in the Zapruder film, and what you think about this single bullet theory, which is insane, devised by the evil Arlen Specter, who I'm afraid is not here tonight because he's dead. But I wish he could be brought to trial. That's one of the great villains of our history, along with several other people in this case. But the mainstream media has bought this story for 50 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. It defies common sense. What you see with your own eyes, back and to the left, you'll see it tonight again, back and to the left, look at it again. And this concept of firing 3 bolt-action shots out of the 6th floor at Kennedy and hitting 7 wounds in 2 different people with 1 bullet is insanely, it's so preposterous. Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's got to roll over in his grave. It's common sense, and I can't believe that all these smart people we have in the United States establishment, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these people have been writing about that. I'm the only one on television who's allowed on television to say anything different right now. It's amazing the consensus we've reached in this country. We've gotten so conservative. It's depressing. But please use your common sense, or if not, read Jim Eugenio's book, Reclaiming Parkland, in which, reclaiming history, he goes after Bugliosi, and he really does a great job. Because no one's ever read the book, by the way. It's just impossible to read. But Jim has, and he has great patience.
It seems like you're able to take on the conspiracy theory, because everyone says Oliver Stone, Oliver Stone, Oliver Stone. I think all of us remember Kevin Kline in Dave, and the greatest cameo of anyone ever. Kevin Kline's pretending to be president, and you come on as a cameo saying, if you look real closely, so you can joke around, and still have a sense of humor about it all?
Yeah, but you remember, I'm the only guy at the end of the film who's right. Everybody in our community, the people, most of the people believe, most of the United States people don't believe that Kennedy was killed by one assassin from the rear. Most people really, with their own eyes, really do believe that he was killed from 2 sides. That's the essence of the case. But you'd have me believe that they treat us like the critical community as if we're abolitionists in 1850 or something, because of our passion about the case. We know we're right. We know that slavery has to end, but they still hung a few abolitionists along the way, Finally, they had to fight.
I can't think about your movie without Gary Oldman. Without Gary Oldman playing Lee Harvey Oswald. Can you talk about the level of detail, method, or him?
Gary's very much a method actor. He really wanted to learn Russian. Marina, his wife, the actress, knew Russian. And he wanted not to hang around with the cast at all. I remember that vividly, because he wanted to hang by himself. He always saw Lee correctly as a loner, as a man who was a bit of a misfit, never fit in. I accept that, but he was not a nut. He was a very smart, cool guy. And but Gary really went to the extremes of living alone and getting almost neurotically into the character. Very good actor. So the whole cast was terrific. Great people.
If I can pinpoint a great scene in the film, Dean Andrews, played by the late, great John Candy. You chose to go real tight on John Candy. You see the smoke coming out, you see his lips going, and you see the sweat on his upper lip. Can you talk about that day?
Well, Jim knew him very well. He was one of those shady attorneys in New Orleans. There's a dozen of them there. And Jim knew him and characterized him that way. That kind of scene, I think, came from the book. A lot of it came from Jim's second book, On the Trail of the Assassins. Jim was a very fine man. And Kevin Costner, who was a conservative, was very impressed by him, as I was. Just to tell you a little story, because the mainstream media has him out to be a villain, of course. But when we walked down the streets of New Orleans, wherever we went in that whole period of time, people would always come up to him on the street. Always, and say, and with great respect on their eyes, and congratulate him on the job he was doing. He had that kind of feeling from the people in the street.
Just last week, President Obama was in Texas, 50 years later. Do you ever fear for him?
Well, why? What's he done to be killed?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I just.
Except for some, there is obviously the racist element, the white supremacist apartheid element in American society, but he is so protected now. They are so protected. They're such in a bubble. You don't have to kill a president. You can just get the bond market to drive him out, or you can get the New York Times and a few editorials, and you get so much pressure on the networks. It's very hard for a president to really move anything. Even in Kennedy's time, he has to keep everything secret that he's trying to do. He has to write the American University speech in secret. He doesn't want this input from the CIA or the Joint Chiefs.
What's amazing about going back to Untold History is these tapes of John F. Kennedy with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it's not just his voice that you hear. You see beautiful graphics, layouts, maps, and talk about constructing that, because it was phenomenal.
Well, to be honest, we don't have all the quotes, and we used actors we tried to imitate as closely as possible.
That guy sounds just like John F. Kennedy.
Well, there is some Kennedy there, and there's some actor, and we'd go back and forth throughout the series, because we don't have some of the behind-the-scene quotes, but they are verified quotes. Everything has double fact-checked. Everything.
Peter said down to every single sentence of the documentary.
But,
well, that's what I heard.
We do have you heard opinion in there too, but the facts have been triply checked, actually. But television documentary style, you have to be very serious, because it's CBS, and they're very concerned about getting their ass sued, especially after some of the things we say about, as you know, some of the characters in here. But your question was about, the maps are done digitally. Some of these maps are old maps, but some of them are very new, because the old maps sometimes don't tell you enough, so we sometimes put new maps in to really help you understand better the geopolitical situation. We also have, I think, music. We put movie clips in. I think you saw one movie clip here. There's a lot of that. To break it up, there's no one-to-one interviews, no talking heads, which I think slows it down, and I think we try to go with the thrust. Every episode is 58 minutes and 30 seconds, and there's a run. It's a big story. We tried to stick. The big thing was sticking to the big picture and not getting stuck in too many details.
And the graphic
book has the details. I'm sorry. The book follows up with the details.
The graphic archival footage is amazing. We're going to take a couple of questions from the crowd. If anyone would like to, yes, I'm going to come out to you. Okay.
Don't go too long, because I think everyone wants to get in the movie.
All right. You asserted that Mr. Kennedy was in danger from a number of enemies. You may have created a number of enemies now through that movie and through this television series. Have you been approached, or are you threatened?
I can't say I feel that I have. I don't feel that. I'm in danger. I don't think a filmmaker is necessarily in their sights. There has to be so much passion, and I've created so much passion over the last 30 years that I think some of that's spent, thank God. But I don't see it. If it happens, I hope you remember this conversation. But it would be a signal of my contribution. That would be, that's important. I've really devoted myself to pursuing my growth, my evolution as a person, not just as a filmmaker, trying to understand what my our life in America is about. We are in a very strange time, as many of you know, and some of it just evades us. We don't understand. It's a bit like having cotton around your head, you know, when you have the NSA listening in on everything we do. It's the strangest time, as Jim Morrison said, this is the weirdest, this is the weirdest life I've ever known, you know. So all you can know is your own life, but it seems weird to me. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind getting out of here pretty soon, but I'd love to see, as a dramatist, the tension that exists. I'd love to see if this empire can still pull it off with all this military muscle and steroids that they're on. I don't know that this thing can last.
Last question, sir, in the front.
Author Alexander Cox just came out with a new book that has been attacked. His YouTube video attacked in the Smithsonian. He says that there's a concerted effort to get the new generation to believe that Kennedy was assassinated by a lone gunman. And then there is Yahoo, which today had a report on a 3D analysis by father and son, which conclusively shows that a single bullet did make those 7 wounds.
Is there a question? Is there a question?
What would you say of that reanalysis?
Well, like all these reanalyses over the years, we've seen the drawings, the animations, they're ridiculous. But I would only turn this over to Jim Junio to really take you frame by frame through why that can't be so. Or Cyril Wecht, who's a top forensic pathologist and has done amazing work in this field. There's also Gary Aguilar, Bob Groden. These people know what they're talking. Roan. So many people, they're experts, have weighed in on this. But the media has been relentless. They've been relentless, and I see in this 50th anniversary they have made a concerted effort. I've done a few of them, and I'm sure by the time they come out, I'll be edited down to a marginalized figure. But definitely, you can see the consensus is they're writing about it as if it's a fact that Oswald did it alone.
Wrapping it up now. Joe Pesci as David Ferry. Just a couple words about that.
Joe was great. I love his energy in this movie. He hated me for doing it because he didn't know that David Ferry had homosexual tendencies, he said. But he's a devoted actor, and he did a great job, and I loved working with him. His energy was high. And everybody in this movie, everybody, Kevin Bacon, I love Jack Lemmon, Ed Asner, Donald Sutherland, and Sissy Spacek. They did a wonderful job.
In closing,
Kevin Costner, who anchors the film.
In 2029, do you have an educated guess of what
There's no 2029. There's CIA is sitting on 1,100 files, 1,100 documents concerning a lot of people we would like to know about. Jefferson Morley's been on top of that. Mm-hmm. There's documents that come through in Jim can tell you 2017, 2029. I mean, there's documents everywhere. You know, we find out more and more each time. The ARRB revealed a hell of a lot. But again, go to Jim's book. Joan Mellon wrote a book, and I would say, The Breach of Trust, Gerald McKnight, excellent. JFK and the Unspeakable by James Douglas, Gaten Fonzie's Investigation, John Newman's Oswald and the CIA, Brothers by David Talbot, Cyril Wecht. I mean, there's so many people. Groden has a new book coming out, Absolute Proof. There's good stuff out there. It's available, and you can get it, but you're not going to hear about it in the mainstream.
All right. Oliver Stone, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy.
JFK on the big screen, for the first time.